Guys, welcome to my channel. This is BRAMstrology, where you are now taking steps to becoming your rare, authentically mastered self using the language of the stars. So, my name is Brandon, if you couldn't tell by all of that. And I mainly do astrology videos. Once again, if you can't tell by all of that, who are you? So, this video is actually a video that I have no prep for, and I just wanted to make. So as many of you know, I do a lot of astrology videos here for specific celebrities that I feel resonance with. If you're interested in that, there's a little playlist up here, you can check that out, where I talk about specific astrological analysis of different celebrities. In this video, there's one celebrity that has kind of piqued my attention over a course of some time, but for some reason I felt now is the time for me to record their astrological analysis. And I'm not sure why, but we'll see as we go into this chart. So the person we're doing an astrological analysis for is Mr. Greyson Chance. You might not know him. If you might not know him at this age, because he is more known for this, which if you still don't know him for that, then I don't know who you are. But point is, I actually fell upon his TikTok, and I was watching one of them just now before this video, which is what inspired this video. And he was talking about how his
with my kid stuff, for the longest time it bothered me so much when someone would bring up that video, and I was just so it felt like this gigantic burden on my chest, on everything about seeing paparazzi again, and how's Ellen, tell us about her, tell us about all these things. And finally, I think as I've gotten older, I've been able to take a step back and realize how just kind of funny it is and how unique it is, right? Like, I started doing this when you were 4 years old, 12 years ago. That's kind of funny. I'm only 24, right? Like, let's all laugh about it. Like, Ariana Grande was in one of my music videos before she ever put a song out. Isn't that hysterical?
Dang.
Isn't that crazy? So I've learned to just accept a lot of these things within my life and within myself. And I think that is like the biggest trick of getting older. Yeah, I was so embarrassed for the longest time. I remember going on dates and being like, oh, these guys are going to look at me and be like, it's the paparazzi kid, like all these things. Now I'm like, back off, you know? I've learned to accept it. And so it's just what you have to do.
Identity was kind of formed around that experience, that paparazzi experience, and now he's kind of broken out of that and become his own sort of person that isn't identified with that specifically. And I was like, that's such a Saturn Aquarius thing. I'm really interested into what this man has going on in Aquarius in general, because I was like, that's such an Aquarius thing to do, an Aquarian energy in general, like not letting those boundaries kind of affect you, or not letting those labels rather affect you and kind of being your own person. So my curious brain was like, let me go and look up this guy's chart. So this chart is a little interesting to me for a couple of different reasons, but I'll get into that in this video. So enough of this little intro. You know who I'm talking about. You know who I'm going to talk about in this video is Greyson Chance. And I'm just going to go in and read this chart here. So I'll see you in the next part where we like actually talk about his chart and read it all up. But yeah, I'll see you there. Okay. So Greyson Chance has an interesting chart. Like I said, when I had read or watched the TikTok that I watched earlier, I was like, that's a very Aquarian thing to do. It's a very Aquarius-like response to be labeled as something and then try and break that label of what people have told you to be. And so I wanted to pull up his chart and do a little reading on him. So I'll put his chart on the screen right now so you can see it. There's his chart, Mr. Greyson Chance. So this is a really interesting chart to me for a lot of different reasons, as I've said. So, first of all, this man was born August 16th, 1997. There is no birth time available, so I can't go as deep as I typically would like to, but also it actually helps because I don't try and go too deep into celebrity or public figures charts in this way anyway, just because it's not something that is typically done publicly, because I don't want to air out people's stuff, because that's not my thing. But the first thing that really interested me was this really big focus on the Capricorn Aquarius side up here. So the thing that I find interesting about this is this man was almost born on Aquarius full moon. He was like a day or so before that. So it's really interesting that he's having a lot of these developments, at least from what I've seen. I mean, obviously I don't know him personally or anything of that nature, but from what I've seen publicly, at least what he's been putting out, it is very much trying to break away from what was established by him, or established by society rather, and what he had gone through, and the labels that were put on him. And that is a very Aquarian moon thing. And because he is a Capricorn moon technically by this chart here, granted that could have changed if we have a later birth time, doesn't really know. But and I'm really intrigued if I ever do get a birth time for him, what if he has a Capricorn moon or an Aquarius moon, because they are both, it changes within that day. So if he were an Aquarius moon, this would be much different, but regardless, still stands that he was almost born in an Aquarius full moon. So with that in itself, it's almost like his life is meant to be a development into Aquarian energy and into the balance of himself being shown by himself as himself, but also being shown as his eccentric self and kind of being accepted for who he is and all of the weird sort of quirkiness or out of the box things that are who he wants to be. So it's really, really interesting in that regard, because that's something I think is really, really pivotal in a lot of his story, at least in what I've seen. Granted, like I said, I don't know him personally, so I can't speak on a lot of things, and I don't know much depth about him as of yet, because I haven't really been following him as extensively as I have other people that I've done these readings on. So I don't know much of his story to be able to piece those things together. But some things that I think are a little bit interesting about this man's chart. So of course we talked about this full moon in Aquarius kind of culminating that he has within his chart. But other things that I find really interesting too is this Mercury North Node conjunction. So with the Mercury North Node conjunction here, we are ironically going through this conjunction right now at the time of recording this video. But with Mercury North Node conjunction, it has to do with communication being such a large part of your story and what you need to develop. And another famous singer that has the same conjunction is the one I just talked about before in my astrological analysis video, which was Jessie J. She has her Pisces Mercury conjunct her North Node in Pisces. And this is actually interesting because this is the reverse. So this is where Greyson Chance has his Mercury conjunct his North Node in Virgo. So it's an interesting sort of comparison that you can make just knowing those two ways about it. Granted, obviously they're entirely different charts, so I can't isolate either and say that they're going to be, they're going to play out like differently. But what I think is really interesting is, from what I've seen from Greyson, a lot of his wordplay and a lot of his lyrics and a lot of the music that he makes is very obviously technical. It's very pinpointy. It kind of gives the vibe similar to, and he probably hates that I'm doing this, because the whole thing is like, literally I don't want to be boxed in and caged into a label, but it's kind of giving that kind of Charlie Puth sort of perfect pitch, sort of like that sort of vibe to it. Now, the Mercury North Node in Virgo energy is always really unique for a lot of different reasons, because it is the sign right before we move into relation with other people. We move into an awareness of another person. And with this Mercury being in Virgo and also being where his North Node's at, it's telling me that there's so much that needs to be understood on how he fits as an individual versus the one-on-one, the person he's talking to, the people he's in, and kind of how to integrate into society or integrate as an accepted person in partnership with people. And so there's a lot of energy with that I'm kind of perceiving. And it's interesting because he is a Leo sun. So he has that Leo sun there, and then he has this Mercury in Virgo, which is so great. But the Mercury in Virgo and all Virgo energy in general is really trying to move and develop into an awareness so that the Libra things can happen, so that the the awareness of another, that the collaboration with another can happen. Now, as we progress through his chart, we're going to talk about little other things here, but this Mercury North Node conjunction is really unique in a lot of ways because it has a way about it where his communication, the way he speaks, is going to be heard. It's going to be perceived. It also makes people want to talk about him, right? When you have Mercury North Node, it doesn't just accentuate your own mind and your own communication ability and your own need to voice yourself, but it also increases that in everyone around you about you. So this has energy about gossip, about talking about you, about media, right? Mercury does, in a sense, rule a sort of media, but it's the media that's personal. It's the media that comes from you. It's your personal media, versus Neptune is more of the media itself, the glamour, the sort of music in itself. And we'll get into that in a second. But for the Mercury part, it's really unique because it's really needing to develop a sense of understanding of why he's doing what he's doing, understanding where he's going, what moves he's going to make, how he's going to speak, how he's going to perform, what words he's going to have to choose. So there's energy with this too of almost like media. How do I explain this? Media, like interviews and like media training, essentially, is kind of what I'm feeling from that. But it's interesting too because Mercury is also typically associated with youth, and with Mercury being with the North Node, in both examples of Greyson and of Jessie J, they both kind of started very young on their path, because Mercury is that energy that rules your like formative ages, the ages that you're learning how to grasp the world, how to understand what you want to do, where you want to go. And Mercury and the North Node almost just puts you there right away, and it's just like you're going to do this, and you're going to communicate, and you're going to talk, and you're going to be heard, you're going to be perceived, you're going to be talked about as well. So there might be as well something to do with potentially with siblings, but I don't see that as much with the Virgo side of things. That would be more on the Gemini side of things, because once again, I don't have his entire chart, house placements and things, so I can't do a lot, as much as I would like to, rather, with this reading. But I still really want to do it because I think this is just, I felt the urge, I felt the pull to do this, so I'm going to do it. And I'm really hoping that I do this chart justice after only really looking at it for a matter of maybe 10 minutes. So, but anywho, so that's that part there. We're going to move on to talk about some other parts of the chart that I think are interesting, because this Venus he has is in Virgo. So we're going to move on. We're going to kind of just go in the order here and just kind of go in the Virgo stuff. So this Venus in Virgo is interesting to me for a couple of different reasons, because it has a really nice aspects to it. It's supporting a lot of the chart. Obviously, you can see he has a lot of things going on in the Capricorn sector, the beginning of Aquarius sector. There's a lot of support with that. There's a lot of really supportive things from what his values are, what he cares about, and the media, because Venus and Neptune is very much media related, right? Because Venus is your values, how you want to be perceived, what you care about, what you bring into you, and then Neptune can make that bigger, but it can also make that more confusing. And with the bigger part of it, that's obviously the media part. That's obviously the platform that he had, or he has. But with the Venus in Virgo, though, it is considered a more difficult placement for Venus. Venus doesn't like to have to think about the details when it comes to love. It doesn't like to worry about, do I have everything perfect for this date? Do I have everything understood about this person, about what I want? Why do I want to be in this relationship? Why do I want to do this? Why do I want to make this move? Why do I want this person to be there? And there is a critical nature with the Venus in Virgo, but the Venus in Virgo just really wants the best for a person. It wants the best for themselves and best for the partnership. And it's trying to understand exactly how to balance, once again, that Leo and that Libra side. It's trying to pivot between those two sectors to make sense of who am I, and what do I want for me, but also what do I want from someone else, and how do I make sure I'm not giving away my identity to someone else or giving way to what people say I am. So it's another reason of that as well. There's a lot of interesting factors within that I think is unique. And once again, I don't really want to focus on his moon, because his moon, besides the fact that it was culminating into a full moon in Aquarius, I can't tell if it was in Aquarius or Capricorn, because based off of this chart, it doesn't give me an exact birth time, and it does change that day. So I'm not really going to talk about the moon. I'm going to talk about it a little bit, because it definitely wants to be spoken about, because the moon's very personal. But I don't really want to get into that as deep as I would typically with a full chart. So we're just gonna, like I said, we're just gonna kind of keep going around the chart just to get a full sort of vibe for this whole thing. So as we move from the Venus in Virgo, we move to the Chiron in Libra, and this actually, I think, really supports the Venus in Virgo, because some astrologers won't agree with me, but there are astrologers that perceive Chiron as being ruled by Virgo, and also perceive Venus, obviously Venus is ruled by Libra. So because of that, there is a sort of what's called mutual reception, which essentially means that the Venus and the Chiron are working together to kind of help each other with getting the same goals accomplished. Now, Chiron in Libra is a little rough for relationships, but it does show that the relationships, the people they are in connection with, are very, very healed by their presence, are very healing for them as well. They might be wounding, obviously, of course, they might cause more issues, more pain, but it's a matter of finding a way to bring that pain into something of be understood, right? Because the Venus is in Virgo. And it's interesting because Venus in Virgo is also where, of course, remember, his North Node in Mercury is at. So it's almost like there's these, it's very much a traditional artist in the sense of, you know, I go through pain in this relationship, I go through this difficult time with this person, and I'm going to write an album about it, right? It's giving like that whole, like the whole Taylor Swift, that thing, it's giving that, where it's like, I'm going to go through a breakup, and I'm going, but it's a breakup that you need to go through. It's not something that, you know, you don't search out things to write music about. It happens to be, that's how you process it. You process the pain you went through communicating it, right? Because Chiron's in Libra, and then Libra is actually going and pointing to this Venus in Virgo, which is right near this Mercury. So it's like, okay, talk about it, perceive it, like get it out, you know, share it, right? And with that, it's a really nice, helpful sort of way of coping with the difficult relationships, the difficult pain, the difficult sort of issues that may arise with that. But Chiron in Libra, Chiron in any air sign, but most importantly, Chiron in Libra, Chiron in Aquarius, or of course, 7th house, 11th house, they're healers. They're here to heal people. They're here to show people that, hey, I went through this crap. I suffered. I went through X, Y, and Z in my story, but here I am. This is who I am. This is what I've gone through. And you can relate to it too. And just by sharing who they are and what their story is and their pain, they heal people, right? Chiron in Libra has a lot to do with a specific relationship too. I'm not going to get too deep into this because, like I said, I don't want to get deep into Greyson stuff. But Chiron in Libra has typically manifested as a really, really difficult relationship at one point. One in particular, one particular really shitty relationship that is something you're going to have to re-examine over and over again and have to process in whatever way you need to process it, because that relationship that you went through, that one really, like the ex that got away, like, or whatever painful situation you had relationally, is going to be something you're going to keep revisiting so that you can then teach others how to relate better, because you have seen and you've had to dig so deep into yourself with a Chiron and Libra because of all this, like, am I lovable? Am I worthy? Am I, you know, because of whatever may happen with this one particular relationship, or it might be a couple of them, but for the most part, it's like one in particular that really like hits you really hard. And this will be something you'll constantly be revisiting, because that's what Chiron does. Chiron typically wants you to keep consistently revisit that wound so that you can become a healing agent for people in that regard, in that sector of life, which in this regard is art, you know, relations, music, you know, Libra things. Like Libra is very much the PR, public image sort of thing of the zodiac. I mean, yeah, there's Capricorn there, but Libra is also a lot of that. There's a lot of relations, and if you don't have balanced relationships, you can't reach that Capricorn stuff. You can't reach the top of the career if you don't have a solid support or solid understanding of how to relate to people, because at the end of the day, business is relationships. So that's that, honestly. So that's the Chiron in Libra. I don't want to really get too deep onto that, because we're going to move right into this Mars in Scorpio, which is very closely connected to this Chiron in Libra. So this is a little unique to me, because this does have, and this is where, like I said, I don't want to get too deep into the chart because I don't want to air out anything. But with the Chiron Mars conjunction, there is some pain surrounded with traditional Martian things. So this can be anything related to aggression or misuse of aggression, misuse of power, misuse of will. Kind of like maybe someone that like failed or felt like they failed or hurt someone in the process to some degree, and doesn't want to use their will or use their own personal energy to get things done because they don't trust it, or they haven't trusted it because of some issue or something that happened. But this in itself is a little bit pained. And there's a lot of things in this chart that I think are a little painful. And once again, I don't want to get too deep into it because it's not my place in this. But there is something of it's giving some sort of like abusive relationship vibe. That's what I'm getting. Because of that Chiron and Libra being so close to that Mars and Scorpio, but it's almost like, because Mars and Scorpio, the thing about it that I think is really interesting, and this is for other notes, I have a whole video on like all the Scorpio placements. It's called Rose in Scorpio. It was actually a video I did a while back. Check that out if you want to know more about specifically Mars and Scorpio and all the other Scorpio placements and Pluto placements. But Mars and Scorpio, for the most part, it will at one point in the life, especially with Scorpio, it will at one point allow you to see how powerful you are, allow you to see how much you can actually get done through your own will, right? Through your own personal execution of energy, which is Mars. It's going to make you aware of that, so you can truly create like either a beautiful life or a destructive life. It's going to give you power in that way. And with this Mars being at 1 degree of Scorpio, the first degree of Scorpio, it's impulsive. It's just learning scorpionic things. It's just learning how to utilize scorpionic energy. It just got out of Libra. It just got out of the relating to others, the understanding other people. And clearly there's something going on of this Mars Chiron thing, where it's almost like Greyson may not be able to do things without knowing or perceiving it hurting people. Or this is very much like the energy of someone that no matter what they do, they hurt somebody. Like, it's a double-edged sword in this way. Like, it's kind of like, even if I do something and I know that it's right and I feel like it's right and I take all the factors into account, someone is still going to be upset with me. And I think that's just in general like a public figure thing. No matter what you do, no matter who you are, what you present yourself as, whatever you decide to do, what actions you decide to take, someone will be upset with you. It's just the way life is. So that's, I think, a part of that too, in that story. But this Mars Chiron is making me feel some sort of aggression that was misused, whether he perceived it or it was thrust on him. It was kind of like pushed on him at a young age. And I'm getting this likely has to do with obviously family, but I'm not trying to get into that, because that's a lot of stuff. Obviously that's where most family stuff comes from. Most awareness of those things come from family issues or family past or patterns that you see. But it's almost like there's a specific relationship that showed a very difficult pattern, a very, very toxic pattern and toxic use of energy. It doesn't have to be a family. It could just be one specific relationship. Like I said, it's not like something that's super keyed in. But that's that part. So we're going to move on from the Mars in Scorpio here. As it relates to that too, just because I want to kind of get on a little bit, because I don't want to get too far into the Chiron stuff. Both his Mars and his Chiron are both squaring all of his Capricorn stuff. I'm omitting the moon just for a moment, just because I don't want to get into that thing right now, because that's the most personal part of this. But the Mars square Neptune, the Mars square Uranus, and Chiron also squaring Uranus and Neptune. These are both, Uranus and Neptune are both generational planets. And as it relates to Chiron and Libra, it's great. This is great for healing the generations of people, healing massive amounts of people, because Chiron's in Libra. It's healing, through art, through music, through one-on-one conversation, through relationships with people. And then Neptune and Uranus are both generational, so that Chiron is coming in and aspecting the Neptune and Uranus, which is the generations of people, the media, the groups, the mass consciousness. And because it's a square, there is this tension, this internalized tension that he may have of needing to incorporate spirituality, spiritual beliefs, artistic qualities to it, and also an awareness of the group and awareness of all that stuff, which once again, this goes back to the whole, he was culminating into a Aquarius full moon energy. So that's a lot of that. Now with Mars being squared Uranus and Neptune, this kind of adds more to this story of misuse of energy that he's trying to understand. And this is once again giving me the damned if you do, damned if you don't. No matter what way I turn, no matter what I do, it's wrong. Like there's a lot of that. And with all of his outer planets retrograde except Pluto, it makes a little bit more of a self-reflective energy. A lot of that, actually a lot more of a self-reflective energy. But the thing with retrograde planets that a lot of people don't recognize is what is meant to happen will happen for retrograde people. What you resonate with, what you understand on a spiritual level with Neptune, or a like higher conscious, like grasping, like mental understanding as Uranus, or Jupiter, like the beliefs that you gather that actually like penetrate, or even Saturn, the things that you actually go after and establish that actually take form and are actually solid, they are what's meant for you. All of those things that happen when you have a retrograde planet natally, it's almost like you chose more specific things to happen to you because it's retrograde, because only fewer things are going to make sense with all of those retrograde planets, right? So that's at least that part of that. But this Mars is rough. And the thing with the Mars is this Mars is still likely squaring his moon. And once again, I don't want to get too deep into that. But it is something of a inner tension of dealing with the emotions, or not recreating the emotional reactions that he saw at a younger age, whether it was, it could honestly even be through the media and through his exposure to fame and the public so quickly. It could easily have been from that. It doesn't have to be family, especially if the moon is actually in Aquarius, because the moon Aquarius people, their family is the public. Their family is literally everyone. Like it's not really something of like a traditional family. It's the family is those people that you associate with, the friends that you have, the overall humanity. And once again, like I said, with that culmination of that Aquarius moon, that is what he's trying to accomplish. And he is so close to accomplishing that. And he's definitely right on his path without a doubt in that way. And so there's that part there. Like I said, I'm trying to not get too deep into things. The other things that I think are a little interesting, so we're gonna kind of keep going here. We're gonna talk about this Jupiter in Aquarius. Jupiter in Aquarius, trendsetter, just easily someone whose beliefs are in alignment with the group collective and what the group needs. But also someone who is influenced by the group, because Jupiter shows where you get your beliefs from, as well as what you are able to influence the most easily. And with Jupiter being in Aquarius, yes, there is easy influence over the collective, but there is also easy influence for the collective to affect the individual, Jupiter in Aquarius. But it's a nice sort of energy to have. Jupiter in Aquarius isn't absolutely terrible. It's not great. But it is something of taking all of that information from the collective, from trends and from the things that you see that people do as a society, and making something out of that, giving people hope. Like, there's a lot of hope in humanity with Jupiter being in Aquarius. There's a lot of social reform, social sort of movements, and just social importance that is given with Jupiter being in Aquarius. And with this placement, it almost gives me like a very collectively in tune energy. And especially with the whole moon being right there. Like, there's a lot of collective connection that he has to everyone. It's very personal. I think a lot of people feel personally connected to him in a lot of different ways. And that, that can be seen through his rise to fame with the whole Ellen thing and that collective thing and all that, all of that. And then also where it is now. And it's interesting because he is still young. He still hasn't gone through his first Saturn return yet. So he's going through some interesting moments leading up to this Saturn return. Granted, the Saturn return won't happen for quite some time. But at the end of the day, this is a really nice chart for collective unity, collective communication. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of mass communication with society, humanity, for betterment of what they actually want. Like, humanity wants, and as well as what Greyson wants. And I think at the end of the day, Greyson's values are definitely in alignment with like the bigger group of people, because he's been through a lot. And what he's been through, I don't think he's talking about as much, which that's his own story, obviously. But two, I don't think he's processed it enough to be able to talk about it, especially because that Chiron is in Libra, and he's going through his Chiron opposition now. It's not exact, but it'll peak in the next couple years, and that'll be probably a big moment for him to go through quite a lot of spiritual growth and awareness of how his own pain is maybe bleeding over into people he's engaging with, or the relationships that he has privately. But there's a lot of that I'm feeling with this chart. But I think he has a nice chart. I mean, he has a little bit of a difficult chart, but it doesn't feel difficult personally, like in the sense of like for him. I mean, granted, I'm sure he would say differently, because of course we only think from our personal perspective of things. But it seems like this is a lot more of society is kind of against him, quote unquote. Or he's trying to form his own path that is not accepted yet, or that is not understood yet. And maybe he doesn't understand it yet, but that's his journey. It's not something that he can figure out on his own, nor will following the collective and following that Jupiter in Aquarius. That is not going to get him everything he wants either. So it's a matter of balancing the self, which is very strong. His self is very strong with all of this really nice Leo Sun, Mercury and Virgo, a lot of that. Balance that with the collective and the collective influence that he allows to have on him, and also that he allows to give and help with and impact. Because he has a nice chart, and it's not, like I said, it doesn't feel difficult for him. Granted, some of it is a little bit of a difficulty in understanding what he wants to do and communicating that clearly, or maybe he does understand it, maybe he does get what he needs to do, but he doesn't want to say it yet. But it's a lot of a development of that, but there's a lot of external things that are kind of pushing him down. All of the external planets, besides Pluto, is retrograde. And with that, with the Pluto not being retrograde, I want to talk about it for a second really quick. And then I'm probably going to talk about it Saturn, and then I'll probably end it there. But this Pluto is at 2 degrees of Sagittarius. Pluto is a generational planet once again, but and I can't do much with this because I'd have to know specifically what house it's in to give a much more concise reading. But he does have a sextile to this Venus, which is really nice. And then it's also sextiling the Uranus and potentially the Moon as well. More than likely the Moon, but we don't know that exactly. But regardless, it is still his evolution and his soul is wanting him to, first of all, be an individual. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of moving into an individualized state and not following the group. There's a lot of that. I mean, the culmination to the Aquarius full moon, and the Mercury North Node, the Chiron in Libra. There's a lot. Saturn in Aries. There's a lot of that, being your own individual and following your own path. But the Pluto there is also wanting to break apart belief structures that don't have meaning anymore, or religion that doesn't have meaning anymore. And it's almost like a search for meaning. And this, ironically, actually really does assist his like mercurial desire, because the Pluto and Sagittarius generation, they're really able to bring in a lot of powerful, transformative ways of thought that people haven't thought about, and they're able to communicate that. These are a lot of the people, this is Gen Z, these are the people that are speaking up about things that no one else has spoken up about. It's a whole, they as well as many other people, many other generations, but mainly Gen Z has, or maybe mainly Pluto and Sag, which can be Gen Z, but mainly Gen Z, millennials, they can honestly create such powerful voices and such impactful voices because they're done. They're done with outdated beliefs, outdated things that don't make any damn sense anymore. No. Use logical thinking. That's what Pluto and Sag is about. And so it's really, I'd have to obviously see more of the chart to really dig into this much deeper, but this is a nice chart, especially considering Pluto of all planets is the one that is direct, because that is the one outer planet that is retrograde the longest of any retrograde planet, like in a set amount of time. So that's really powerful in that way. And so, yeah, and then the last thing, obviously, we're going to talk about the Saturn in Aries, which is one of my favorite placements. I have a whole video about Saturn in Aries, so if you want to check it out, check it out. It's down in the description, somewhere on the screen, whatever. Check it out. But you know how this works. Come on. But so the Saturn in Aries is a little interesting to me because I've dealt with a fair share of Saturn in Aries people. Okay? And all of them that I have met, all of them, have all been not exactly clear on what they want, where they're going. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a lot of commitment that a Saturn in Aries is given. They are given a focus and a need to focus and focus their path, understand their path. And I think I spoke about this in the Saturn in Aries video, but most Saturn in Aries that I see have a absent father figure, because Saturn is debilitated in Aries. It doesn't like to be in Aries. And it typically, I mean, if the father is there, the role model of the father, of the authority, the traditional authority, is a little skewed. And by skewed, I mean not good, not supportive, not understood. I mean, it could manifest different ways. I'm not saying this is exactly how it is, because obviously you have to know the entirety of the chart. But typically Saturn Aries views their father or their paternal energy, paternal figure, it could be the mother, whatever the main authority figure was in the life, typically will see it as they just can't function. They can't do what they need to get done. They can't provide for themselves. They can't be their own authority, or they didn't provide for themselves. They didn't provide for me as a Saturn Aries individual. They didn't provide for me. And it's a matter of the Saturn Aries person understanding that their direction is something that they choose. And it's not some external authority, but they have their own authority to choose their own path. And that's one of the things I think is so beautiful about the Saturn Aries generation, is they have such a powerful preservation of their own identity, where they're just like, I want to be me, and that's it. And I will figure out who the hell that is, but I want to be me. And no one can take that away. No one can take away who I say I am. And that's a lot of what Greyson's chart is saying, is a lot of, I want to be me. Let me be me, even if I don't know who that is yet, or even if I knew who that was 10, 15, 20 years ago. Let me be me. And maybe I don't know all the things, right? Maybe I don't know everything. Maybe I don't know everything about myself because I'm young, right? Or whatever it may be. Or I haven't experienced X, Y, and Z. But at the end of the day, allow Saturn Aries to have their own authority. And Saturn Aries need to have their own authority. Granted, his Saturn Aries is retrograde, so there's a little bit of a difficulty, once again, in manifesting that or stepping into that authority, for fear of misuse of that energy, or misuse of how it will be perceived, or how it will be accepted. But it's the commitment to the path that is most crucial. And I can guarantee Mr. Greyson is committed to the path that he's going on. He's not wavering. He might waver and he might pivot, but his goal is still the same. And a lot of that has to do with connecting to the collective, healing the collective through music, through communication, through speech, through the mind, through speaking. If he wants to write a book, this would be a good one. It'd be a good one. Writing a book would be a really good one for him. Granted, like I said, I'd have to see the rest of the chart, but it would be a very pivotal part of him. A lot of great writers, not just musicians, but great writers, have Mercury conjunct the North Node, and Venus is there too, so it could be a beautiful, beautiful energy for him. And clearly he has the media presence for it, so that would be an option, I would say. But at the end of the day, this is a really nice chart that I was not expecting to see today at all. I wasn't expecting to even look at a chart today, really, but for some reason I felt the need to do this reading, and so I did. And I'm really happy I did, because Greyson has a really powerful chart in a lot of ways. And looking at his chart now, I can definitely see why there was a lot of things thrust on him at an early age. And I can see why he's doing what he's doing now. And I wish him, honestly, the best of luck, because he's going to do some powerful things once he gets out of his own way and recognizes that he isn't going to hurt everyone like people have hurt him, or he's seen people hurt, because he's probably seen some shit. I mean, we all have, but with what he went through with being thrust into fame or into the public eye so quickly, that can definitely damage your psyche a little bit, mainly because of what you perceive at a young age. But that doesn't mean that can't heal from it, can't, get through it, because clearly he's doing an amazing job. So at the end of the day, this is a beautiful chart, and I think there's a lot of growth for this. And just remember, there's a lot of this that's culminating to the Aquarius full moon. So I think when we have Aquarius energy going on, I think Greyson will be able to step up, which is going to happen pretty soon. Pluto is going into Aquarius pretty soon here. Pluto's dancing on top of his Neptune, so that's a lot of fun. But as we move into stuff, I think his voice will become way more important, because clearly that's what needs to be. He clearly needs to be heard with that Mercury North Node, and that is going to happen regardless of what anyone really says. So, yeah. So that was my little reading on Mr. Greyson Chance there. I really hope you guys enjoyed this reading. This was such an impulsive thing. Literally, I just picked up the camera and started recording, which I don't typically do like that. But yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this. If you guys want any of my other videos, of course, I have the playlist down below, as well as all my other stuff. You guys want to book with me, message me, whatever. You know how this works. Obviously, if you guys haven't subscribed, the YouTube algorithm. I don't have to explain all this stuff to you. You guys know what the spiel is. I don't have to get into it, so whatever. But I love you guys, and I hope you guys enjoyed this a lot. As I've said probably 3 times already, but whatever, it's fine. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Love you. Have a great day. And yeah, bye.